Joining us right now, Congressman Ed Royce, a Republican from California. Earlier this week, he participated in a House Financial Services Subcommittee hearing on the issue. Representative Royce, great to have you here on Bloomberg. Is there enough urgency, as Congressman Shelby suggested, in these plans?
Well, I think what Congressman Shelby is concerned about is getting private capital back into the housing market. And long term, that's exactly what we need to do. I think that we now have a report from Treasury that agrees with the Fed's conclusion. That conclusion is that the government-sponsored enterprises, in fact, help create a bubble in the housing market. They do so because politicians get involved in the process and call for things like zero down payment loans, right, and push for lower underwriting standards with the idea that everybody should get a house, whether they can afford it or not. So what they're saying is, let's get private capital back into the system for housing, have it primarily dependent upon that, because then you're going to have market discipline in the equation, and you're not going to create a situation where you have all of this flipping of homes because everybody can go even without a down payment and get a home. Well, if we get away from the housing goals that required the low down payments and all of that, and we go back to a market-based system, then yes, we're headed in the right direction. That is what Shelby's talking about, and I think that's where we need to go.
Congressman Royce, it's Peter Cook here. Let me ask you, the three options that the Treasury Secretary laid out today, what is your take on those three options? The first of those options is very similar to Republican legislation offered by your colleague, Jeb Hensarling.
That is correct, and that goal would be to sort of phase in over time by ratcheting down the conforming loan limits and allowing the private sector to come in. Private capital would then have space, to come in and slowly take that share of the market, and eventually we're left with FHA handling low income and some moderate. But for most of the market, if you ratchet down over time and introduce into the market private capital, you then phase out the GSEs. That would be the goal.
Representative,
you can do that deal with Treasury Secretary Geithner right now?
Well, Geithner, I think Treasury and the Fed prefer that as the solution, I believe, because I think they're a little worried about the guarantees. The problem with the guarantees is that how do you properly price risk, and how do you avoid having happen exactly what happened with Fannie and Freddie? That is to say, the taxpayers have already shelled out $150 billion. The estimate is it'll be $350 billion by the time it's done. So they would like a market-based system in order to sort of take care of this problem of the taxpayers paying for the losses with privatized profits for the GSEs and losses, for the public purse. So I think that's why that's the best option.
Representative Royce, let me just build on what Peter said, and we just have a little bit of time here.
Yes.
You said, let's get private capital back, then we'll have market discipline. But how can we ensure that we'll have risk discipline based on what we went through in the financial crisis?
Because according to the Fed, a lot of the housing problems originated with the GSEs. Remember, they were doing the securitization of most of the loans, and in so doing, they were putting sort of the stamp of approval of the government. There was an implied government guarantee on that activity. At the same time, they were also holding $1.5 trillion of these loans in their mortgage portfolios. A lot of it was junk, like Countrywide. You couldn't sell that stuff in the market, but there were affordable housing goals on the GSEs, so they had to buy it and had to hold it. And so this is where these losses came from. And once that collapse occurred, AIG had insured this, then AIG collapsed. The banks were holding GSE instruments as part of their core capital. They were suddenly undercapitalized. That's what the Treasury and Fed are concerned about. That's why they'd like to move us back, evolve us back to a private market.
All right, we're going to have to leave it on
housing for the most part.
We're going to have to leave it on that note. Congressman